let's talk a little bit about a passive and active sniffing. Most of the time, when we're talking about doing Wireshark captures, we say we need a way to listen to the packets. The way we do that, there's a couple of ways, is we can plug in a hub between two sides. So you've got your inbound and you've got your outbound, and you say, okay, here's my hub here, plug in here, and then pick up the packets. You're going to need to intercept, you're going to need Ethernet cables, and you're going to need the ability to do that. And that might not be possible with your setup or with the network that you're working with. So you might have to work with a tap. Well, I'll show you some taps in just a minute. That's passive sniffing. That's different than active sniffing. What you're saying is the switch is not telling me what I need to know because it's doing its job. So what we can do is we can force the switch to do what we want by doing ARP spoofing, MAC flooding, and MAC duplication. All of those things are basically corrupting the way that the switch works, if the switch will let you, so that you get all of the packets. Now, from an intrusion detection standpoint, this is really, really noisy when you start doing any of these. So if you think you're going to be playing around with ARP spoofing and MAC flooding, it's not going to work. So how does a switch work? Well, its responsibility is to separate collision domains. It does not separate broadcast domains. And it makes all of its decisions based upon the MAC address, not the IP address. It looks at layer 2. It creates a table within that device and that lists the MACs on a particular segment. And when I say segment, usually what you think of is port. So that is one segment, and it will say, I'll make my decisions there. It's not very smart, and it will take any new data. What new data? I could say I've changed my MAC address, and it would update that table, unless that was fixed with that port. So what we want to do is we want to figure out another way to do this. We don't want to corrupt the switch, so what we'll do is we'll do port spanning or mirroring. We go to the switch itself and we say, all of the traffic that is flowing across all of these ports, we want you to copy all of that to this port over here and give us all that data. Now, let's talk operations for a second. If you walk into an organization that's got racks and racks of switches and you walk up to the network administrator and say, I want you to span all of that data of all those 100 megabit ports out that gigabit port, and I want you to shoot all that data to me, they're going to go no way, because that port, that gigabit port, that uplink port is very expensive and also very important to them. So the likelihood of them doing that for you is kind of low. You could span individual ports out of that and take an extra piece off of it. Again, unless they've got a core switching function that a core switching design that allows them that extra bandwidth to get your packets off so that you can examine them, they're going to push you to the side. What you really need is you need a tap. And there are all different types of taps out here. This is just a short little peek at some that you can also find on the Wireshark site. They'll talk to you about these and try and sell you these. That's their way of making money. Totally respect that. What you do is you put this tap in place between the source and destination. The nice thing about the ones that they offer at the Wireshark site, I think it redirects to a paid site because Wireshark is .org. But the nice thing about these tools that they have there is they are passive. And what that means is that if you go an inbound and an outbound and that device fails and it loses power, it makes the connection again and there's no loss whatsoever. And what we want to do for those network people, those administrators out there, is we want to say, this device is designed so that if it fails open so your stuff keeps on flowing. And it won't interrupt. If my device that I'm plugging in capturing these packets fails, it won't have any effect on what we're doing here whatsoever. Now, depending on the speed of the network and the segment that you're on, you're going to have to buy more expensive taps as you go along. And this is going to be a difficult process to get in place. Some organizations are so tuned into this, they actually have these taps placed well within the network, and they've got a design for this. That's rare, and so you've got to be looking for it, and you've got to be able to communicate. I would suggest that you have some sort of background knowledge in something like Cisco's CCENT or CCNA so that you can communicate with these people, or the Juniper certification so that you can communicate with these people and say, this is what I need. You're a security guy that understands network. You're a security gal that understands the network and can communicate with those people. Now you can create profiles that are customized preferences that you want. I like Wireshark set up this way, so I want these preferences, I want these captures, I want these display filters, and I want these coloring rules. And so I'm going to create that. I'm going to create this custom profile, and I'm going to name it, and every time I launch Wireshark, I'm going to start it up. If you're doing this more than once a week, you're going to want your own capture profiles. Let's talk capture filters. Remember, the data flows off the network, the WinPCAP catches it, the capture filter says, I will only give you a subset of the information that's flowing, and then the capture engine looks at it. So that's capture filters, and we're going to look at the other filters in a minute.